Have you ever wondered what secrets the glittering world of royalty hides behind closed doors? Secrets so explosive, so utterly shocking, that they could unravel everything we think we know about the people we idolize? Imagine finding out that the very woman the world has crowned as a modern icon, the Duchess of Sussex, Meghan Markle, had a past so entangled in scandal, it threatens to ripple through the royal family like a tidal wave. This isn't gossip. This isn't rumor spun in some tabloids late at night. No, this is confirmation straight from a source no one expected, Prince Andrew himself. And what he revealed about Meghan Markle before she married Prince Harry could forever change the way you see the woman who captured the attention of millions worldwide. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. It all begins with a question: what do we really know about Meghan Markle? We've seen the glamorous photos, the interviews, the viral moments, and the carefully curated narratives. We've watched her rise from a Hollywood actress to a royal figure whose every move is dissected, admired, or criticized. But behind that polished image, what if there were layers of her life that few knew? Layers so controversial that even the most seasoned insiders were left speechless when they came to light? For years, Meghan's journey has been framed as a fairy tale. A young woman from California, navigating a world of fame and privilege, eventually meets her prince and steps into the grandeur of the British monarchy. We've seen the public adoration, the charity work, the elegant appearances, and the interviews that seemed carefully crafted to build her image as both a relatable human being and a royal icon. But what if the story before the fairy tale, the chapter before Harry, was far more complicated, far more entangled in a world of secrecy, elite social circles, and private indulgences that only the wealthy and powerful could access? That chapter begins on yachts. Lavish, secluded, and completely exclusive, these floating palaces were more than just retreats for the elite. They were theaters of influence, power, and sometimes scandal. Imagine champagne glasses clinking under the sun, sleek boats cutting through turquoise waters, and the very best society had to offer gathered in one place. Here, every conversation, every glance, every alliance mattered. And here, according to multiple sources now coming to light, Meghan Markle was no stranger to this glittering scene. She was already moving in circles most people could only dream of, rubbing elbows with figures whose names alone could open doors or close them forever. But what she did there, who she was with, and what relationships formed in those secretive moments would later become a focal point of a storm the monarchy never saw coming. And then, there was Prince Andrew. Already a controversial figure within royal circles, Andrew's reputation had long been a mixture of privilege, charm, and controversy. A man whose very presence commanded attention. He was someone who could shape social narratives and influence reputations with subtlety or scandal. To hear him speak about Meghan Markle, the woman who would eventually marry his nephew, Prince Harry, was a revelation that no one expected. Not the public, not the royal family, and certainly not Meghan herself, if she had anticipated how this revelation would shake the foundations of her carefully managed image. Andrew's confirmation didn't just hint at the past, it exposed it, and with it, a truth that many had whispered but few dared to confirm. Why does this story matter now? Why, in 2025, does Prince Andrew's confirmation reverberate through tabloids, social media, and royal commentary like an earthquake? Because timing is everything. The monarchy is at a crossroads. Every move, every revelation, every secret can influence public perception, legacy, and the delicate balance of power within the family. And Meghan Markle, as a figure already scrutinized, becomes the central character in a story that combines personal betrayal, public fascination, and the kind of scandal that sells millions of headlines. The question is no longer whether Meghan's past is relevant. It's how it will reshape the narrative of the modern monarchy, Harry's life, and the image of the Duchess we thought we knew. Now, let's rewind a little. Imagine the early days of Meghan's life in the glittering elite circles. Hollywood had introduced her to fame, yes, but it also gave her the confidence, the poise, and the understanding of optics required to navigate exclusive social worlds. She knew how to charm, how to influence, and how to remain the center of attention without ever seeming desperate for it. She moved through spaces filled with actors, producers, and socialites with an ease that hinted at something deeper, a strategic mind, aware of how perception can be managed, how stories can be crafted before the media even has a chance to write them. But what most people didn't see was the proximity to power she began to cultivate, the subtle steps she took in circles far beyond the Hollywood hills. Yachts, in particular, played a starring role, not just for leisure, but as networking arenas for the elite. There, private encounters carried consequences, and relationships formed in secrecy often dictated public futures. And it was in this world that Meghan Markle allegedly became involved in situations that would later be described by insiders as highly controversial, even scandalous. The environment was intoxicating, glamorous, and dangerous. Champagne flowed freely. Deals were whispered over dinner. Friendships were fleeting, alliances shifting like waves beneath the sunlit decks. And among these sun-drenched gatherings, Meghan was seen not just as a guest, but as a participant in a game of social influence few understood. Was she naive, ambitious, strategic, or all of the above? That's a question whose answer might just redefine everything you thought you knew about her. Then came the turning point. While Meghan's public narrative has always been carefully curated to highlight her romance with Harry, Andrew's confirmation paints a far more complex picture. For the first time, a royal insider directly connected Meghan to a figure whose own history with controversy has been the subject of global attention. The confirmation acts as both a revelation and a trigger, a spark that threatens to set alight the narratives carefully built over years. And the implications are not just personal, they're political, cultural, and emotional. Meghan's image as the modern Duchess suddenly collides with a past that many considered private, yet powerful enough to shape public discourse. But what does this mean for Harry? How does a husband, already under immense public scrutiny, process revelations about his wife that she has kept hidden, or at least unacknowledged, until now? Imagine the shock, the confusion, the emotional turbulence. Imagine hearing about this not from Meghan herself, but through a confirmation that lands like a bombshell from one of the most unexpected sources. How do you reconcile love, loyalty, and public perception when confronted with a past that refuses to stay buried? And how does the monarchy handle the fallout, especially when the media, the public, and international audiences are watching every reaction? And this is only the beginning, because Andrew's confirmation, while shocking, is not the end of the story. It opens doors to questions, speculation, and narratives that have long been whispered in private rooms, in yachts, at exclusive gatherings, and in elite social circles. Questions about influence, ambition, relationships, and the carefully managed image of one of the most scrutinized women in modern history. And as each revelation emerges, the stakes rise, not just for Meghan and Harry, but for the institution they represent and the public who has been invested in their story for over a decade. So what came next? How did Meghan Markle respond behind closed doors when Prince Andrew confirmed her past in a manner that would shake the world? How did the monarchy react? How did Harry navigate a sudden storm that threatened not only his wife's image, but the fragile equilibrium of royal family dynamics? And most importantly, what does this mean for the public narrative we've all been consuming, believing, and reacting to for years? The answers to these questions are as shocking as they are complex, and they set the stage for a story that is part scandal, part personal drama, and entirely mesmerizing. But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. Have you ever wondered what life looks like when the world's elite live completely untethered from the rules everyone else must follow? Picture this: sparkling waters stretching into the horizon, sun bouncing off the deck of a yacht so massive it almost seems like a floating palace, and music blending with the gentle lapping of waves against the hull. Here, privilege isn't just displayed, it's celebrated, flaunted, and wielded like currency. And into this world of excess, glamour, and secrecy stepped Meghan Markle. But not as a passive observer. No, she moved through it with purpose, with grace, and with the kind of confidence that immediately makes people take notice. From the outside, it looks perfect. Champagne glasses, designer swimsuits, conversations punctuated with laughter and clinking cutlery. But beneath the surface, the elite yacht world is a labyrinth of influence, power plays, and silent judgments. Every handshake carries meaning. Every smile hides a calculation. Every introduction could be an opportunity, or a trap. And for Meghan, this world was far more than a playground. It was the proving ground where reputations were forged, alliances formed, and personal brands were meticulously crafted long before any public spotlight. Think about it. For someone like Meghan, Hollywood had offered a taste of fame. The cameras, the red carpets, the awards, all of it was intoxicating. But Hollywood is one thing. The private circles of the ultra-wealthy are something else entirely. Here, visibility is a double-edged sword. Everyone knows each other, yet the rules are unspoken, invisible, but rigidly enforced. You don't just show up, you perform. You don't just converse, you influence. And Meghan quickly realized this. Every interaction was a test of charm, intelligence, and adaptability. Every glance, every word, every gesture mattered. Now, imagine the yachts themselves. These weren't small, rented boats. These were symbols of power, private, opulent, equipped with every luxury money could buy. You could host a party with dozens of influential figures in complete privacy, away from prying eyes and judgmental tabloids. It's the perfect place to see and be seen, to make an impression that would ripple through elite social circles for years. And Meghan, according to insiders, didn't just attend these gatherings. She stood out. She knew the art of observation. She understood timing. She recognized opportunities where others might only see leisure. In other words, she wasn't just participating, she was strategizing. But here's the twist. The elite yacht world isn't just glamorous. It's a crucible. It tests loyalty, integrity, and discretion in ways most of us could never imagine. Secrets are currency, and trust is fragile. A misstep here can cost more than social embarrassment. It can derail careers, friendships, and personal reputations. And this is where Meghan's story becomes especially compelling. Because the very qualities that helped her navigate Hollywood, intelligence, poise, confidence, became even more crucial in this new environment. The stakes were higher, the players were more powerful, and the consequences of miscalculation were devastating. Consider the personalities involved. These gatherings were often populated by individuals whose lives are constantly under public scrutiny, yet they thrive on secrecy. Royals, billionaires, celebrities, influential socialites, all in close proximity, far from cameras, but surrounded by whispered judgments. And Meghan? She was navigating this maze, learning not just how to engage, but how to influence. She was observing patterns, noting alliances, and subtly positioning herself as someone who could move between worlds, Hollywood and high society, fame and royalty. And that, dear viewers, is exactly what makes her story so electrifying. But it wasn't just about appearances. These yacht gatherings were breeding grounds for relationships that carried real weight. Friendships formed here could open doors to opportunities unseen in Hollywood. Conversely, a single misstep could close doors forever. And this is where whispers about Meghan's connections first began to circulate. Who was she seen with? Who did she converse with late into the night? Which alliances seemed to solidify beneath the golden sun and the gentle sway of the waves? Every observation mattered. Every rumor, whether true or fabricated, would later feed into a narrative that the public could scarcely believe. And then there's the emotional layer. Living in a world so removed from normality can be intoxicating, but also isolating. You're constantly performing, constantly aware that every gesture might be interpreted, judged, or reported. Meghan, according to insiders, experienced this tension acutely. The allure of power and influence came with a price. Heightened scrutiny, impossible expectations, and the persistent question of loyalty, both to herself and to those around her. Did she belong in this world, or was she navigating a treacherous path that could just as easily consume her as elevate her? That's the question that looms over her early life in elite society, a question that few could answer, but that everyone would later judge. Now, ask yourself, how does someone rise in such a world without losing themselves, or becoming something they never intended? Meghan's ability to maneuver here foreshadows the precision, control, and strategic acumen that would later define her public image. She understood the stakes. She recognized the power dynamics. She leveraged every advantage, subtlety, and opportunity. And in doing so, she drew the attention of figures who held influence far beyond social gatherings. Figures whose lives were intertwined with legacy, royalty, and power. One of these figures, of course, was Prince Andrew. Known for his controversial reputation and connections to the upper echelons of society, Andrew was not just another attendee at these gatherings. He was a nexus point, a man whose social capital could shift narratives and whose personal interactions carried consequences. When Meghan and Andrew first crossed paths, it was more than an introduction. It was the beginning of a connection that, according to multiple insiders, would later ignite one of the most shocking revelations in modern royal history. But at the time, no one could have predicted the magnitude of the storm it would unleash. Picture it, private decks bathed in golden sunlight, laughter echoing across the water, conversations that mattered far more than they appeared, and Meghan, alert, poised, observing every detail, every nuance, every unspoken rule. It was here, in this seemingly idyllic setting, that she honed the social instincts that would later define her public persona. The elite yacht world was more than a backdrop. It was a crucible of character, ambition, and subtle power plays. And within this world, Meghan was both participant and observer, quietly shaping her narrative, positioning herself strategically, and learning the art of influence in ways most would never comprehend. But here's the contradiction. The very world that elevated her also exposed her vulnerabilities. Every connection she made, every alliance she navigated, carried risk. The whispers, the rumors, the hidden judgments. They all followed her into the future. And years later, when Prince Andrew confirmed aspects of her past, it was precisely this world, the one where she had thrived, charmed, and maneuvered, that became the lens through which the public would interpret the revelation. Every detail mattered. Every interaction mattered. Every glance from a sunlit deck would be re-examined under the harsh light of public scrutiny. So, what did Meghan gain in this world? Experience, influence, visibility, strategy. But what did she risk? Reputation, judgment, and exposure. And as we move forward in this story, we'll see how those early experiences aboard yachts, in private gatherings, and within elite social circles laid the foundation for a narrative that would later shock the world. A narrative that didn't begin with Harry, didn't begin with the public, and didn't begin with the media frenzy. It began in the sunlit, opulent, secretive world of the elite yacht scene, a world where the stakes were high, the lessons harsh, and the consequences permanent. And as we trace Meghan's journey from these glittering decks to the global stage, one question looms. How much did her early encounters, alliances, and strategies shape the person the world would eventually know? How much of what we see today is a continuation of carefully honed instincts learned in those sun-soaked, champagne-filled moments? And perhaps the most pressing question of all, what secrets from that world remain hidden, waiting for the perfect moment to surface? Because the truth, as you're about to discover, is far more complex, far more dramatic, and far more shocking than anything tabloids have ever dared to print. And what came next? The interactions, the relationships, and the connections that would later be confirmed by Prince Andrew himself, would ignite a storm that no one saw coming, changing the course of Meghan Markle's life forever. Have you ever wondered what it feels like to meet someone who can instantly change the trajectory of your life? Someone whose mere presence commands attention, whose connections can open doors few even dream of, and whose whispers can shape reputations in ways that ripple far beyond what you can imagine? For Meghan Markle, that person was Prince Andrew. And the way their paths crossed in the exclusive, sun-drenched circles of yachts and private gatherings was about to set off a chain of events no one, including Meghan herself, could have anticipated. It all began subtly. Imagine a private yacht anchored off the Mediterranean coast, a sleek vessel gleaming in the afternoon sun. High-powered individuals, royalty, Hollywood elite, and influential business figures were scattered across decks, sipping champagne, engaged in conversations that seemed casual but were laden with unspoken significance. In a world where every glance and every word can be currency, Meghan entered the scene with poise, elegance, and a quiet confidence that immediately drew attention. Andrew was already a figure of fascination in elite circles, controversial, charming, and undeniably influential. His presence was magnetic, and his ability to navigate complex social hierarchies was second to none. For Meghan, this was no ordinary social encounter. It was an introduction into a labyrinth of power dynamics where every interaction carried weight. She wasn't just meeting a royal. She was entering a sphere where influence, secrecy, and opportunity intertwined in ways that few could comprehend. Think about it. For Andrew, the world had always been a stage. He understood how to maneuver through elite social settings, how to project charm while maintaining control, and how to use relationships strategically. Meghan, on the other hand, was entering a space that required her to operate on multiple levels simultaneously: observe, adapt, engage, and influence, all without drawing unwanted attention or missteps that could haunt her later. The stakes were immense, and yet, according to insiders, she navigated the situation with uncanny precision. Their initial interactions were subtle. A casual conversation by the yacht's railing, a shared laugh over a private joke, the kind of gestures that seem insignificant at the moment but carry the potential to ignite connections lasting far beyond the afternoon sun. It was these small, seemingly innocuous exchanges that would later be examined under intense scrutiny once Andrew's confirmation of Meghan's past became public. But here's the twist. Andrew's connection to Meghan was far more complicated than a simple social introduction. Sources suggest that he recognized qualities in her that were rare, qualities that made her stand out in a world where everyone was trying to shine. Ambition, intelligence, charisma, and the ability to navigate complex social hierarchies were all traits that Andrew noticed, traits that would later play a pivotal role in the revelations that shocked the public. The bond they formed was subtle, yes, but potent, a combination of social strategy, mutual recognition of influence, and shared access to elite networks. Now, you might be asking, why does this matter? Why is a connection in a yacht setting so critical to the story we're unraveling? The answer lies in power dynamics. In elite circles, associations matter. Who you know can determine opportunities, reputations, and the trajectory of your public life. Andrew was not just a participant in this world. He was a gatekeeper. And Meghan, whether consciously or unconsciously, was positioning herself in a way that would later allow her to navigate into unprecedented visibility. There's an emotional undercurrent to consider as well. For someone like Meghan, who was ambitious but also human, the ability to engage with a figure like Andrew brought both exhilaration and tension. On one hand, it was an opportunity to gain insight, to establish connections, and to learn the unspoken rules of an exclusive world. On the other, it carried the risk of exposure, judgment, and scandal. Every word spoken, every gesture made, could have implications that extended far beyond that afternoon on the yacht. And then, there's the element of secrecy. This world, unlike Hollywood, thrives on discretion. Rumors circulate, yes, but confirmations are rare. Most interactions remain private, known only to those present. Yet, Andrew's eventual confirmation of Meghan's involvement in this elite sphere revealed just how tightly woven these experiences were into her past. What was once hidden behind closed doors, private decks, and discreet conversations suddenly became a matter of public interest, scrutinized by millions. But it wasn't just about social dynamics. The connection between Meghan and Andrew also opened doors into networks of influence, privilege, and access. These networks weren't just social. They were gateways to opportunities, introductions, and experiences that could shape Meghan's path in ways Hollywood alone never could. She was learning the language of power, the subtleties of influence, and the ways in which reputation could be carefully curated or irreversibly damaged. Imagine the complexity of navigating this world as a young woman. The pressure to perform, the need to remain poised, the awareness that every movement could be interpreted, judged, or recorded. It was relentless. And yet, Meghan seemed to thrive. She understood the stakes. She recognized the potential, and she learned quickly how to maneuver within them. The yacht gatherings were not merely social events. They were classrooms, and Meghan was both student and teacher, absorbing lessons about influence while subtly demonstrating her own capabilities. And this is where the story becomes even more compelling. According to insiders, Meghan's interactions with Andrew were observed by others in the circle. Individuals who later recounted details that, when pieced together, painted a picture of a relationship that was not merely casual. Whether it was her presence on certain yachts, her conversations, or the subtle acknowledgments between her and Andrew, These details hinted at a bond that carried weight, significance, and a level of intimacy that would later become explosive once revealed. So, what does this connection really mean for the larger narrative? It means that Meghan's story, before Harry, was already intertwined with powerful figures who could influence perception, opportunity, and public narrative. It means that her path was not solely Hollywood or chance. It was calculated, observed, and strategically navigated. And it means that when Andrew confirmed aspects of this past, the revelation wasn't just a sensational headline. It was the culmination of years of carefully managed interactions, alliances, and strategic positioning. Now, consider the contradictions. Meghan's public image has been crafted meticulously, a modern, relatable duchess, an advocate for women, a figure who stands against injustice. Yet, her past interactions in elite yacht circles with controversial figures like Andrew reveal a complexity that challenges this narrative. How does one reconcile ambition with morality, opportunity with discretion, influence with vulnerability? These contradictions make the story not only shocking but deeply human. Meghan was navigating impossible social and emotional terrain, balancing ambition with risk, strategy with exposure, and personal growth with public perception. And as we move forward in this exposé, one question becomes critical. What were the unspoken rules of engagement between Meghan and Andrew? What conversations, gestures, and alliances laid the groundwork for the confirmation that would later shake the world? How did these private interactions evolve into a narrative that would explode publicly, altering the course of her relationship with Harry, the royal family, and millions of observers around the globe? The answer is as complicated as it is shocking. Because Andrew's confirmation didn't just highlight a social connection, it illuminated the network of influence, power, and strategy that Meghan had navigated long before she became a duchess. It showed a side of her that few ever saw, savvy, calculated, and deeply aware of the leverage that comes with proximity to power. And for Harry, for the monarchy, and for the public, this confirmation became a lens through which every past action, every public appearance, and every carefully curated moment would be re-examined. But what came next? The private encounters, the whispered agreements, and the subtle power plays that followed would ignite a scandal far greater than anyone could have anticipated, changing Meghan Markle's life forever and sending shockwaves through the royal family and the world. Have you ever wondered what really happens behind the closed doors of a luxury yacht? The kind of setting where champagne glimmers in the sunlight, laughter echoes off polished decks, and the elite move like actors in a carefully staged play, each gesture loaded with meaning? For Meghan Markle, these secret yacht meetings weren't just glamorous escapes. They were crucibles, arenas where reputations were made, alliances were tested, and futures were quietly shaped. And it was here, in these sun-soaked, intimate gatherings, that the story connecting her to Prince Andrew, and eventually the royal family, truly began to take shape. Picture it. The Mediterranean sun beating down on crystal waters, a sleek yacht slicing through the waves like a silent predator. Inside, the air is filled with the faint scent of perfume, the clinking of crystal glasses, and conversations punctuated with laughter that hides as much as it reveals. This was a world far removed from Hollywood's red carpets or the public appearances Meghan was used to. Here, every movement, every glance, every laugh was scrutinized. To outsiders, it appeared idyllic, carefree, almost frivolous. But for those inside, it was a complex game of influence, strategy, and, sometimes, survival. The yachts themselves were more than vessels. They were floating stages where the elite performed their power. Celebrities, royalty, business magnates, and socialites mingled in a controlled chaos that demanded acute social awareness. Being invited to one of these gatherings meant more than social recognition. It signaled acceptance into a network where opportunities were currency, and every relationship had value. For Meghan, these secretive meetings offered both promise and peril. She was learning to navigate a world where the rules were unspoken, yet deviations could carry consequences far beyond embarrassment. And then there was Andrew. Known for his controversial reputation and high-profile associations, he wasn't just another guest. He was a nexus of influence. At these yacht gatherings, he operated with a mix of charm and subtle authority. Observers noted how people gravitated toward him, not just for conversation, but for guidance, validation, and connection. For Meghan, being near Andrew wasn't about casual socializing. It was a strategic encounter. She recognized, perhaps instinctively, the leverage that proximity to him could provide, the doors it might open, and the subtle ways influence could be exerted without overt displays of power. But the intrigue wasn't only in who was there. It was in the dynamics of the gatherings themselves. Imagine long, shaded tables with exquisite meals, soft music drifting in the background, and conversations layered with subtext. A compliment could be an assessment. A laugh could signal approval. A simple glance could indicate agreement or a warning. Meghan, according to insiders, was highly aware of these dynamics. She observed, adapted, and responded with precision. Every interaction was measured, every connection evaluated. And in doing so, she positioned herself as someone both approachable and influential, a rare combination in a world obsessed with hierarchy. Yet there was tension beneath the glamour. The yacht world thrives on secrecy. Rumors circulate, yet truths are carefully hidden. Alliances are made in whispers, and betrayals can be devastating. Meghan had to learn quickly how to maintain her image while maneuvering through complex social hierarchies. She was a student of power in a classroom where the lessons were lived, not taught. And the stakes? They were personal, professional, and, ultimately, public. One misstep could compromise everything she was building. Observers recall specific instances that, on the surface, seemed mundane but, in hindsight, were pivotal. A conversation by the railing, a shared joke under the sun, a discreet exchange of glances across a crowded deck. These moments were loaded with implication. They weren't just social niceties. They were signals, strategies, and assessments. Who was trustworthy? Who could be leveraged? Who might pose a threat? And in a world where information is as valuable as gold, Meghan was learning to gather, interpret, and utilize it with remarkable skill. The emotional intensity of these meetings cannot be understated. On one hand, they were exhilarating, a chance to mingle with powerful individuals, to gain insights, to observe the subtleties of influence firsthand. On the other, they were isolating. Meghan was acutely aware that she was under observation, that every gesture might be interpreted, judged, and remembered. The pressure was relentless. It required a balance of confidence and caution, openness and reserve, charm and calculation. For a young woman navigating a male-dominated elite world, these pressures were immense. And then there's the human element. Even in elite circles, emotions run deep. Desire, ambition, jealousy, and loyalty mix in unpredictable ways. Meghan's presence on these yachts was noted, discussed, and observed. Her interactions with Andrew, while subtle, carried weight. Whether it was a lingering conversation, a shared laugh, or a private moment, insiders suggest that these encounters laid the groundwork for relationships that would later become explosive once publicly confirmed. These weren't just fleeting social interactions. They were formative experiences with lasting implications. Think about it. The world outside could never see these moments. No cameras, no media, no public judgment. Just a select group of people observing, evaluating, and interacting in a bubble of power and privilege. But what happens in private rarely stays private forever. In Meghan's case, these moments would later be scrutinized, analyzed, and interpreted through the lens of scandal, revelation, and public fascination. Every gesture, every comment, every interaction suddenly took on new significance once Andrew's confirmation surfaced. The contradictions are striking. Meghan's public persona, graceful, charitable, poised, was meticulously curated. Yet the private world of yachts revealed a different dimension, a world where strategy, influence, and careful observation were essential for survival and success. It raises questions about how much of her public image is performance, how much is strategy, and how much is shaped by necessity. Can someone truly maintain authenticity while navigating such treacherous waters? Meghan's experiences suggest that she not only navigated them, but did so with a degree of skill that few could rival. And let's not forget the stakes. These yacht gatherings weren't just about networking. They were about visibility, reputation, and potential leverage. A connection here could lead to invitations elsewhere, introductions to influential figures, and opportunities that would shape the trajectory of one's life. For Meghan, Her proximity to Andrew and other elite figures provided not just access, but insight into the mechanisms of power that few outside these circles ever witness. She was learning lessons in influence, strategy, and perception that would later inform her navigation of the royal family and global media. Yet, for all the glamour, there was risk. The very qualities that made Meghan stand out, intelligence, poise, charisma, also made her a subject of scrutiny. Every interaction could be misinterpreted, every gesture analyzed for hidden meaning. And in a world where perception is everything, the consequences of a misstep could extend far beyond embarrassment. They could alter reputations, influence relationships, and, in Meghan's case, become part of a narrative that would eventually shock the world. And then, there's the intrigue. According to insiders, Meghan's early interactions on these yachts were observed not only by her peers, but also by individuals with long memories and extensive influence. These observers recorded, remembered, and later recounted details that, when combined with Andrew's confirmation, created a narrative far more complex and dramatic than anyone could have anticipated. It wasn't just about who she knew. It was about the dynamics of those relationships, the subtleties of influence, and the decisions she made in a world that few will ever fully understand. As we delve deeper into this story, one thing becomes clear. Meghan's experiences in the secretive yacht world were not trivial. They were foundational. They shaped her understanding of power, influence, and strategy. They introduced her to individuals who would later play critical roles in her life, both publicly and privately. And they set the stage for the confirmation that would later shock the world, revealing connections, relationships, and choices that the public could scarcely believe. But what came next? The private encounters that escalated, the alliances that formed, and the subtle exchanges that would later be scrutinized by the world, would ignite a scandal far greater than anyone expected, marking the beginning of a story that would change Meghan Markle's life forever. Have you ever wondered how whispers turn into headlines? How a casual conversation, a fleeting glance, or an unguarded moment can spiral into a story that captivates the world? For Meghan Markle, the rumors surrounding her early connections with elite circles, and specifically her interactions with Prince Andrew, began long before anyone imagined the public would ever hear them. These whispers, first murmured behind closed doors, would later grow into a storm of speculation, scandal, and ultimately, confirmation that shocked the world. It all started quietly. In the elite social circles of yachts, private gatherings, and exclusive parties, Meghan's presence did not go unnoticed. She had a charisma that drew attention naturally, an effortless charm that made people want to talk to her, work with her, and, in some cases, observe her. But in a world where privacy is prized and reputations are fragile, being noticed can be both a blessing and a curse. The very qualities that allowed Meghan to thrive, poise, intelligence, charm, also made her a target for observation and gossip. Consider the environment. These yachts were not just floating luxury spaces. They were incubators of influence, where the powerful mingled with the ambitious. People were always assessing each other, silently weighing potential alliances, threats, and opportunities. And in this environment, whispers began to emerge. Who was speaking to whom? Who lingered a little too long in conversation? Who seemed to command attention effortlessly? Meghan, according to insiders, became a frequent subject of these observations. Her interactions, particularly with Andrew, sparked curiosity, speculation, and eventually, rumor. But here's the fascinating part. The rumors weren't malicious at first. In elite social worlds, gossip is often a form of social navigation, a way to signal awareness, assess reputations, and understand power dynamics. A whispered conversation about Meghan was less about judgment and more about mapping the social terrain. Who could be influential? Who could be leveraged? Who might disrupt the status quo? Meghan's early days in these circles put her directly into the line of sight for these unspoken assessments, and naturally, rumors began to take shape. The timing of these rumors is also critical. At the point when Meghan was moving through these social circles, she was building a reputation as both charming and ambitious. Hollywood had given her confidence, but it was these yacht gatherings, these private elite spaces, that honed her skills in influence and social intelligence. Observers noted her ability to navigate complex dynamics, to engage with powerful figures effortlessly, and to leave a memorable impression. It was a combination of visibility and subtlety that created the perfect breeding ground for whispers, and later, stories. And then, as often happens in these worlds, whispers became questions. Those who had been present at these gatherings began to wonder about the nature of Meghan's connections. Why was she always near Andrew? Why did she appear so comfortable in an environment that often intimidated others? What, exactly, was the extent of her relationships within these elite circles? These questions were natural in a space where everyone's actions were carefully monitored and assessed. But when combined with the human tendency to speculate and embellish, they became the first threads of a narrative that would later explode into public awareness. Consider the contradictions. Meghan was building an image of independence, intelligence, and social awareness, yet the whispers suggested a level of intimacy and influence that went beyond casual acquaintance. Some observers described her as strategically present, while others simply noted her charm and poise. The mixture of admiration, envy, and curiosity created a fertile environment for rumor. And in a world where private actions can become public spectacle, these rumors were destined to escape the confines of yachts and private gatherings. The media eventually caught wind, as it always does. In elite circles, information flows like currency, sometimes intentionally, sometimes inadvertently. A casual remark overheard at a party, a friend sharing a story with a journalist, a socialite's offhand comment. These were all potential sparks. Slowly, the whispers began to reach the ears of those outside the yacht world. What had been private, intimate speculation became fodder for articles, blog posts, and eventually, mainstream media coverage. Each iteration of the story added layers, some factual, some speculative, others entirely fabricated. Yet, Meghan's story wasn't just shaped by the gossip itself, it was shaped by the reactions to it. When rumors first surfaced, there were denials, subtle clarifications, and strategic public appearances designed to reinforce a particular image. But the very act of responding, of acknowledging or countering whispers, often fueled curiosity further. The more the public sensed tension, secrecy, or controversy, the more attention the story garnered. Rumors that began quietly on a yacht now had the power to influence public perception, shaping opinions even before full details were confirmed. The emotional impact of these rumors cannot be underestimated. For Meghan, learning that private interactions were being observed, discussed, and speculated upon must have been a mixture of exhilaration and anxiety. On one hand, the attention affirmed her presence and influence within elite circles. On the other hand, it introduced a level of exposure and scrutiny she had never experienced before. Every gesture, every conversation, every encounter was now not only socially significant, but potentially a public narrative in waiting. And here's where the stakes escalated. The rumors surrounding Meghan's interactions with Andrew were not just casual gossip. They hinted at intimacy, influence, and access. They suggested that Meghan's rise in these circles was not purely social but strategic, and they implied connections that, if confirmed, would carry profound implications. These were not idle whispers. They were seeds of a story that, over time, would grow into a revelation with global impact. Consider how the ripple effect works. Once a rumor gains traction in elite circles, it inevitably reaches journalists, commentators, and eventually the public. Social media amplifies it exponentially. A single story, once whispered, can become a viral sensation. And for Meghan, the whispers of her past interactions were laying the foundation for one of the most explosive revelations in modern royal history. Each rumor, each speculation, each half-remembered detail added a brushstroke to a portrait that the public would later view in full color, thanks to Prince Andrew's confirmation. And yet, the fascinating part of this narrative is the interplay between truth, perception, and timing. Some details of Meghan's yacht interactions were accurate, some exaggerated, and some entirely fabricated. The human tendency to fill in gaps, to interpret ambiguity as intention, created a layered story that no single observer could fully comprehend. And when Andrew's confirmation came, it did not merely validate rumors. It reframed them, placing previously ambiguous interactions into a context that was undeniable, dramatic, and utterly shocking. As we move into the next chapter, one question looms. How did these early rumors evolve into a concrete narrative that implicated Meghan's past in ways she may not have anticipated? How did whispers shared in private now become a public spectacle, dissected, analyzed, and debated across continents? And what role did Andrew's eventual confirmation play in transforming speculation into a revelation that would leave the world questioning everything they thought they knew about Meghan Markle? Because the truth is, the rumors were only the beginning. And what came next, the private moments, the insider accounts, and the subtle yet consequential meetings on those yachts, would set the stage for a confirmation that shocked the public, challenged the monarchy, and changed Meghan Markle's life forever. Have you ever experienced the moment when a whispered rumor suddenly becomes undeniable fact? The moment when speculation transforms into revelation, and everything you thought you knew is turned on its head? For Meghan Markle, that moment arrived like a lightning strike, and the source of the revelation was none other than Prince Andrew himself. A confirmation so shocking, so unexpected, that it sent ripples through the royal family, the media, and the public worldwide. And it began with a single, carefully delivered statement that left everyone stunned. The scene was as dramatic as the revelation itself. Prince Andrew, a figure already shrouded in controversy, was speaking to an audience that included journalists, insiders, and in some cases, royal confidants. His words were measured, deliberate, yet laden with implications that would reverberate far beyond the immediate moment. Meghan Markle, the woman the world had come to know as the modern Duchess, had her past, her connections, her alliances, and her private life validated in a way that no one could ignore. The confirmation wasn't casual. It wasn't offhand. It was deliberate, and its timing was calculated. Imagine the impact of such a revelation. For years, rumors had circulated quietly, whispered in private, debated in elite circles, dismissed by some, exaggerated by others. But Andrew's confirmation changed the equation entirely. Suddenly, what had been speculation was now fact. The connections between Meghan and Andrew, which had been hinted at in hushed tones on yachts and at private gatherings, were now undeniable. And the implications were staggering. A narrative of influence, strategy, and intimacy that had been hidden from public view was now exposed, and the world was watching. Consider how this moment unfolded publicly. Reports began to surface almost immediately. Headlines screamed the revelation, capturing the shock, the drama, and the intrigue. Social media erupted with speculation, analysis, and debate. Commentators dissected Andrew's words, searching for nuance, context, and subtext. Meanwhile, the royal family was forced into a delicate dance, balancing the need for discretion with the inevitability of public scrutiny. Meghan, and by extension Harry, were suddenly at the center of a storm that had been quietly brewing for years. But what makes this confirmation truly remarkable is the way it reframes everything we thought we knew about Meghan Markle. Her public persona, the poised, charitable, and relatable Duchess, was now juxtaposed against a private history that was far more complex, far more entangled in elite social networks than the public had ever imagined. Andrew's words didn't just confirm a connection. They provided context, credibility, and specificity, transforming vague rumors into a concrete narrative that could no longer be dismissed. And the timing was critical. The world was already fascinated with Meghan and Harry, their relationship, and their departure from traditional royal roles. Any revelation about Meghan's past had the potential to amplify public interest, intensify scrutiny, and fuel media frenzy. Andrew's confirmation didn't just provide details. It ignited a perfect storm, combining timing, credibility, and the allure of scandal. The reaction was immediate. Tabloids, social media, and news outlets around the world seized upon the confirmation, amplifying every nuance, every implication, and every potential consequence. The emotional impact on Meghan cannot be overstated. To have a private part of your life confirmed by someone as prominent and controversial as Andrew is more than startling. It's destabilizing. For someone who carefully manages public perception, who has navigated scrutiny and criticism with precision, this confirmation was a seismic shift. Suddenly, her private history was public, her past scrutinized, and her reputation analyzed under the harshest of lights. The stakes were higher than ever, and the fallout was only beginning. Consider Harry's position in all of this. For a husband already under intense media scrutiny, the confirmation posed both personal and public challenges. How do you support your spouse when her past is suddenly thrust into the global spotlight in a way that's explosive and inescapable? How do you navigate the emotional fallout, the questions from the media, and the inevitable speculation about how this revelation might reshape the narrative of your relationship? Harry's response, his internal conflict, and his public posture would become a focal point in the unfolding drama, raising questions about loyalty, trust, and resilience in the face of unprecedented scrutiny. But the confirmation wasn't just personal, it was strategic. Andrew's decision to validate aspects of Meghan's past was not accidental. Every word, every inflection, every nuance was deliberate, carrying implications for Meghan, Harry, and the royal family. Some insiders speculate that the timing was influenced by ongoing tensions, media pressures, and long-standing perceptions within elite circles. The confirmation was not merely a revelation. It was a calculated statement that reshaped narratives, reasserted influence, and forced the public and the monarchy alike to reassess their understanding of Meghan Markle. And then there's the ripple effect. The confirmation triggered a cascade of reactions. Media outlets dissected every word. Social media users debated interpretations, speculated on motives, and projected consequences. Royal commentators analyzed the impact on family dynamics, protocol, and public perception. Every conversation, every article, every post added layers of complexity to a narrative that had already captivated the world. Meghan's past, once a private chapter, was now a public saga, scrutinized from every angle imaginable. Yet, amidst the shock and the headlines, the human dimension cannot be ignored. Imagine the psychological weight of such a revelation. For Meghan, it was a convergence of personal history, public perception, and strategic calculation. The past she had navigated with care was now amplified for a global audience. The private connections that had once seemed manageable, discreet, and perhaps even advantageous were now public, analyzed, and judged. The emotional strain, the pressure to respond, and the necessity to manage perception were immense. But the drama didn't end with the confirmation itself. Andrew's revelation was merely the spark. It set in motion a series of events, reactions, and countermeasures that would escalate the story into something far larger. The confirmation forced Meghan and Harry to confront the implications of her past in ways that were immediate, unavoidable, and deeply personal. Every decision, every public statement, every interaction now carried the weight of Andrew's words, creating a landscape of tension, scrutiny, and high stakes that would define the next chapter of their lives. And as we move forward, one question remains. How did Meghan respond in the private moments following Andrew's confirmation? How did Harry navigate the sudden shock? And what steps did the royal family take to manage a situation that had the potential to disrupt not only personal relationships, but the very perception of the monarchy? Because what came next, the strategies, the emotional fallout, and the public reactions, would prove even more dramatic than the confirmation itself, escalating a story that was already destined to captivate the world. The confirmation was not the end, it was the beginning of a storm, and no one was prepared for the magnitude of what was about to unfold. Have you ever wondered what it feels like to meet someone who can instantly change the trajectory of your life? Someone whose mere presence commands attention, whose connections can open doors few even dream of, and whose whispers can shape reputations in ways that ripple far beyond what you can imagine. For Meghan Markle, that person was Prince Andrew. And the way their paths crossed in the exclusive, sun-drenched circles of yachts and private gatherings was about to set off a chain of events no one, including Meghan herself, could have anticipated. It all began subtly. Imagine a private yacht anchored off the Mediterranean coast, a sleek vessel gleaming in the afternoon sun. High-powered individuals, royalty, Hollywood elite, and influential business figures were scattered across decks, sipping champagne, engaged in conversations that seemed casual but were laden with unspoken significance. In a world where every glance and every word can be currency, Meghan entered the scene with poise, elegance, and a quiet confidence that immediately drew attention. Andrew was already a figure of fascination in elite circles, controversial, charming, and undeniably influential. His presence was magnetic, and his ability to navigate complex social hierarchies was second to none. For Meghan, this was no ordinary social encounter. It was an introduction into a labyrinth of power dynamics where every interaction carried weight. She wasn't just meeting a royal. She was entering a sphere where influence, secrecy, and opportunity intertwined in ways that few could comprehend. Think about it. For Andrew, the world had always been a stage. He understood how to maneuver through elite social settings, how to project charm while maintaining control, and how to use relationships strategically. Meghan, on the other hand, was entering a space that required her to operate on multiple levels simultaneously: observe, adapt, engage, and influence, all without drawing unwanted attention or missteps that could haunt her later. The stakes were immense, and yet, according to insiders, she navigated the situation with uncanny precision. Their initial interactions were subtle. A casual conversation by the yacht's railing, a shared laugh over a private joke, the kind of gestures that seem insignificant at the moment but carry the potential to ignite connections lasting far beyond the afternoon sun. It was these small, seemingly innocuous exchanges that would later be examined under intense scrutiny once Andrew's confirmation of Meghan's past became public. But here's the twist. Andrew's connection to Meghan was far more complicated than a simple social introduction. Sources suggest that he recognized qualities in her that were rare, qualities that made her stand out in a world where everyone was trying to shine. Ambition, intelligence, charisma, and the ability to navigate complex social hierarchies were all traits that Andrew noticed, traits that would later play a pivotal role in the revelations that shocked the public. The bond they formed was subtle, yes, but potent, a combination of social strategy, mutual recognition of influence, and shared access to elite networks. Now, you might be asking, why does this matter? Why is a connection in a yacht setting so critical to the story we're unraveling? The answer lies in power dynamics. In elite circles, associations matter. Who you know can determine opportunities, reputations, and the trajectory of your public life. Andrew was not just a participant in this world. He was a gatekeeper. And Meghan, whether consciously or unconsciously, was positioning herself in a way that would later allow her to navigate into unprecedented visibility. There's an emotional undercurrent to consider as well. For someone like Meghan, who was ambitious but also human, the ability to engage with a figure like Andrew brought both exhilaration and tension. On one hand, it was an opportunity to gain insight, to establish connections, and to learn the unspoken rules of an exclusive world. On the other, it carried the risk of exposure, judgment, and scandal. Every word spoken, every gesture made, could have implications that extended far beyond that afternoon on the yacht. And then, there's the element of secrecy. This world, unlike Hollywood, thrives on discretion. Rumors circulate, yes, but confirmations are rare. Most interactions remain private, known only to those present. Yet, Andrew's eventual confirmation of Meghan's involvement in this elite sphere revealed just how tightly woven these experiences were into her past. What was once hidden behind closed doors, private decks, and discreet conversations suddenly became a matter of public interest, scrutinized by millions. But it wasn't just about social dynamics. The connection between Meghan and Andrew also opened doors into networks of influence, privilege, and access. These networks weren't just social. They were gateways to opportunities, introductions, and experiences that could shape Meghan's path in ways Hollywood alone never could. She was learning the language of power, the subtleties of influence, and the ways in which reputation could be carefully curated or irreversibly damaged. Imagine the complexity of navigating this world as a young woman. The pressure to perform, the need to remain poised, the awareness that every movement could be interpreted, judged, or recorded. It was relentless. And yet, Meghan seemed to thrive. She understood the stakes. She recognized the potential, and she learned quickly how to maneuver within them. The yacht gatherings were not merely social events. They were classrooms, and Meghan was both student and teacher, absorbing lessons about influence while subtly demonstrating her own capabilities. And this is where the story becomes even more compelling. According to insiders, Meghan's interactions with Andrew were observed by others in the circle. Individuals who later recounted details that, when pieced together, painted a picture of a relationship that was not merely casual. Whether it was her presence on certain yachts, her conversations, or the subtle acknowledgments between her and Andrew, these details hinted at a bond that carried weight, significance, and a level of intimacy that would later become explosive once revealed. So, what does this connection really mean for the larger narrative? It means that Meghan's story, before Harry, was already intertwined with powerful figures who could influence perception, opportunity, and public narrative. It means that her path was not solely Hollywood or chance. It was calculated.